Our video on the 10 worst UK oil fields was very, very popular. Today, we're going to look at the 10 best oil fields. So what constitutes our definition of best? Well, we look at things like overperformance, fields that have been major game changers. Sometimes, not always, they're very big. We find that there's an interesting geological story or an anecdote that we think makes these stand out. We're going to count down from 10 to 1. Starting at number 10 with Chestnut. Discovered back in 1986 and first oil in 2008. There is now 4 producers and 2 injectors. Chestnut is operated by Spirit Energy. It's the Hummingbird Spirit FPSO. Here, this is one of these Savan cylindrical vessels. This is the facility. There's, I think, about half a dozen of them deployed right now. Maybe that number's gone up. And it's reservoired in the Eocene Nockland sandstone reservoir, and you can see here's the Forties sands feeding these injectites here through the Carron and into the Nockland, and this is the sort of the geology that we expect in here. It's within the Horder Formation shales, and we see these injectites. We have an oil leg, we have a gas cap on top, and a link to the underlying aquifer. The vessel is currently preparing for decommissioning. You can see the partnership there, but reserves were initially estimated to be of the order of about 7 million barrels. To date, it's produced over 27 million barrels. You can see it's been quite a consistent producer and relatively good uptime for that. Here's a map of the top of the reservoir, a depth map. It really is an irregular surface with a series of wells that have been drilled over the years. In the bottom right, you can see the thumbnail of our Trove entry for Chestnut. So coming to number 9, and we've chosen Petronella. Now, we could have chosen some of the bigger fields in the Outer Moray first, like Claymore and Tartan and Piper, but we've chosen Petronella. It's located here. It's actually a single well tieback to the Tartan platform. It was discovered in 1975 and was delineated by 6 appraisal wells. Ultimate recoverable reserves from the main portion of the field are 17 million barrels. That was an estimate made in 1991, but according to the NSTA production database, 38.5 million barrels has been produced. It's reservoired in the Piper sand. You can see here's the it's kind of a part stratigraphic trap right up onto this Horst feature. It's basically being truncated by the base Cretaceous unconformity. Here is a map. It's quite a small, tight little feature, and it's been a tremendous well. Again, you can see the Trove entry for it. At number 8, we've gone with Howe. Howe is located in the central North Sea. Here's a seismic line west to east showing where Howe is, and a geoseismic interpretation here, where the purple is the Kimmeridige clay formation, and the underlying Fulmar-Huygen was basically drilled by this geosteered well here, the 2212A9Z, above the field-wide oil-water contact here at 10,572 feet. It was discovered in 1987. It's been on stream since 2004, and you can see that this field has held up again very, very well over time and has produced over 20 million barrels. It's a single well tieback to the Nelson platform, and the production behaviour indicates the field has a larger connected volume than was first modelled. So here is a map of Howe, and again, initially it was actually a Shell who produced the field. Here's the Trove entry. At number 7, the Nelson field. Well, the Nelson field is really part of the UK North Sea folklore. It was on stream since 1994. It's a simple 4-way dip feature with about 790 million barrels of oil initially in place. This is a map on the top Forties sandstone, but the story goes back to the days when the initial well was drilled here into this interchannel zone. It had a very, very low net to gross, and actually the operator at the time walked away, thought that there wasn't a sufficient size here. But it was recognised that there were potential for a facies change, and these channel sands were recognised on either side. It was actually Enterprise Oil who drilled and developed the Nelson field, and as you can see, it plateaued at around about 150,000 barrels of oil a day, then went into decline here. Then from around about 2010, 2012, it's been on sort of a steady production through this time. To date, it's produced 481 million barrels of oil. On the seismic here, you can see it's a drape over the Forties Montrose high system here at the top Forties level. We've chosen as number 6 Buzzard. There's a long story that could be told about the companies that missed out on this opportunity, but eventually it was discovered and drilled up, and you can see it's been a fantastic field. It is today one of the biggest producing fields on the UK CS. The pinch-out play at the time, it was considered too high a risk to drill, but now with hindsight, it really was a fantastic opportunity. Here's the infrastructure involved here. There are 4 platforms associated with it. And then here's the production profile you can see coming on stream and plateauing at over 200,000 barrels a day, and then kind of going in decline from around about 2015. Now, the one feature that we're not seeing through here is the impact of the Buzzard Phase 2. It just seems to be a steady decline to date, and we'll see if there are indications of that as we go forward in time. So this Phase 2 was a major development of the eastern area of the field. At number 5, well, we go to Wytch Farm. It's the largest onshore oil field in Western Europe. The initial target for the field was the Jurassic Inferior Oolite and Bridport sands, and BP took over as the operator in 1984 and realised the main resource was actually in the deeper Triassic Sherwood sandstone. So this was a development where you can see in this cross section here's the Jurassic Bridport, but it was the underlying Triassic Sherwood that really became the principal reservoir. So reserves increased from around about 30 million barrels up to 378 million barrels. To date, well, it's produced 506, so the reserves have just gone up with time. It's got some very, very extended reach drilling wells that reach out here way offshore. I think 11 kilometers or more is one of the drilling records that was set some years ago. And you can see that between 1980 and 1990, the oil production back in the days of British Gas was quite low, and then it then really picked up here in the around about 1990, plateaued just over 100,000 barrels of oil a day, and then has been in decline ever since and still declining. Perenco are now the operator of the field. Been a tremendous success story. Number 4, well, it has to be Forties. 3 billion barrels of oil reserves. It was discovered back in 1970s. A similar geology to the Nelson field we've talked about earlier. You can see here coming on stream in around about 1975. It plateaus at nearly 500,000 barrels of oil a day just for a few years. Goes into its decline phase. This is where BP sold the field and Apache became the operator. And they've invested a huge amount of money, and they've done a lot of infill drilling and upgrading of facilities. And you can see that they've extended this platform way beyond, where you may have projected the field to be declining to back in the early 2000s. Here's a seismic line, or interpreted seismic line. And you can see here's the Forties sandstone, the Paleocene sandstone, massive thickness of sand. But there are different facies in here. There's lots of channelized sands and then overbank, crevasse splay type deposits. But some of the wells in here, have produced, say, 75 million barrels from the Forties. And then there is a Charlie sand where there's potential for another 50 million barrels, and that can be from within a single well. It's an amazing field. It's a drape feature, simple 4-way closure really, and it's basically on top of the Forties Montrose High. It's draped over that feature, an older feature. So from Forties, Well, we're going to go to Brent. Why Brent? Well, Brent, it's become a global benchmark. Brent produced 1.86 billion barrels of oil equivalent. There were 4 platforms. Initially, there was the oil production, and here you can see getting up to about a plateau of around about 480,000 barrels of oil per day. Then going into decline. At some stage here, it was jointly producing oil and also reducing the amount of water injection. It was starting to become go into the gas blowdown phase even, and you can see here the gas blowdown continued on. The field has now stopped producing, and most of the facilities have actually been removed. I think it's only Brent Charlie that as a platform that is still out there. You can see it's reservoired within the Brent group. It's a major tilted fault block here, and there's also oil reservoir down here in the underlying Statfjord formation. There was multiple reservoirs within here, so the Broom, Rannick, Etiv, Ness and Tarbert sands constitute the Brent group, and they're very different, contrasting reservoir properties in terms of both reservoir continuity and poroperm characteristics. But it certainly has been one of the biggest and best fields in the UKCS. Our second choice, well, it's the Cook field. Why the Cook field? Cook is located here, so it's just down in the central North Sea area. It's southeast of Kittiwake and northwest of the Gannet complex. Cook was a single well tieback to the Anasauria FPSO. It was operated by Shell, although discovered by Amoco in 1983. First oil was in 2000, and the single well tieback was one of a series of fields, 4 fields that tied back to Anasauria. The field produced for 19 years without any discernible water cut increase until the water injector was drilled back in 2019. So the field's produced over 54 million barrels of oil to date and some 74 billion cubic feet of gas. Operated by Ithaca, partners are the Malaysian companies Ping Petroleum and Hibiscus. And finally, we come to our number 1, and this is going to surprise quite a number of people because we have chosen Kimmeridige. Why Kimmeridige? Well, here's a photograph of Kimmeridige Bay, and this is the Kimmeridige clay formation here. It's not actually the source rock for the Kimmeridige oil field. That's from the underlying Liassic sands, the lower Jurassic. The Kimmeridige here is marginally mature. It's not not within the oil window, giving out appreciable volumes of hydrocarbon. The field has produced since 1961, has produced over 4 million barrels of oil, although the PPRS database only shows 0.21 million barrels. The well, it's a well that just keeps on giving. At the end of 2021, as we can see this from this profile below, it's still producing around about 50 barrels of oil per day. The reservoir is the Middle Jurassic Cornbrash Formation, but the recovery factor is well over 100%. It really isn't quite known where the oil's coming from. Here's a picture of the nodding donkey at Kimmeridige, and we just think this is so bizarre and so quirky, we decided to give it our number 1 slot. So here is our top 10. We've got a few surprises in there, but we thought that they were all kind of interesting geological anecdotes, geological cases. Here are some honourable mentions. We were going to do a top 20, but thought that the video would be getting a little bit too long. And what are the learnings we may have made from this? Well, in the case of some of these fields, there is a generally poor geological understanding. The Kimmeridige, Cook and Chestnut are examples of that. In some cases, fields were starting to produce, and then we found that there were later and deeper reservoirs, examples being Wytch Farm, Magnus and beryl with some of the lower Lewis sandstones. Some of these fields are characterized by excellent quality reservoirs, and examples would be the Forties, Brent, Piper, Nelson and Buzzard, where we've got in some cases multi-Darcy sands. For some of these fields, well, certainly there have been some very happy coincidences. The likes of Alba, Griffin, Formby and Nelson, where they have been found and produced even then they were targeting perhaps different horizons or deeper horizons. And we also see that there's quite a number of fields which have been just so good as a single well producer. Howe, Petronella and Cook, 3 examples of that. So these are where the top 10 are located. You can see 1 taken from the Brent province, 2 in the Outer Moray Firth. The central North Sea features for many of the fields, and there's quite a range of different reservoirs and different play types there. And we've chosen 2 from the Wessex Basin. These are those fields, and that's where they're located. So if you want to understand more about those, then certainly be found in the relevant TROVE database. Here in the south, well, these are mainly gas fields, and this video is about oil fields, so none of the southern North Sea fields feature in this video. But we add on here the likes of Formby, Welton, Schiehallion and Magnus and Beryl, which all make it into the honourable mentions. You can see that we've got a range of plays essentially up and down the entirety of the onshore and continental shelf of the UK. What have we learnt? Well, in our recent video on the 10 worst oil fields, we concluded most failures come from subsurface issues. Some of the common themes from the 10 best fields are similar. Most unexpected successes result from a misunderstanding of the subsurface. You know, fields can overperform as much as they might underperform. Smaller single well tiebacks that just keep on going can be absolutely fantastic economic successes. Big fields with simple traps. Are there any left in a mature basin? You would think the majority of these have been drilled up, and what's remained are smaller accumulations. But have we found everything? Probably not. The other feature that we've picked out from here is that, well, it seems that where we have new operators coming on board, there can be some new ideas. We recognise that some of our choices are probably going to be seen as quite controversial, so please add comments below. Let's talk about which fields do you think should be in the top 10, and we'll look to perhaps do a follow-up video on this to include some of your choices. For now, please like the video, subscribe, ring the bell, and you'll be reminded when we have some new material coming out. Also, some links here to click on if you would like to see other videos in the sequence. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you back on the channel soon. Bye for now.